All right, hello everyone. We are back again. This is episode number 2 of this brand new journey for Gabe and I. How you feeling today, Gabe? It was a pretty exciting weekend, wouldn't you say?
I'm feeling good. Yeah, I'm hyped.
Yeah,
I'm
it
excited to
was.
make
It
a
was.
second video here.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We not a terrible showing for our first video.
Yeah.
We took some constructive criticism. I am using AirPods this time. Hopefully my audio quality is a little bit better, and we're also going to try to make this mock draft go a little bit faster than the last one. So we are going to try to do full 3 rounds today, obviously based on the results from the NFL draft. And then if we have time afterwards, we might talk to you guys about some winners and losers from the NFL draft. Veterans, not rookies,
Mhm.
but like veterans who we think are winners or losers based on what happened in the draft. So I'm pumped. I'm ready to get after it, man. How about you?
Yeah, I'm excited. Yeah, I think this draft is gonna be a lot of fun, and then we are in a rookie draft already in one league that me and Paul are in. So yeah, it's already in the third round. It started at noon, and 2 hours later, we're in the third round already.
Yeah, the
So
picks are
it's
going by
fun.
quickly. That's what I love to see. And we got a couple tomorrow, a couple on Tuesday. So, and I'm sure the rest of you, right,
Yeah.
watching this video, I'm sure you got rookie drafts maybe that have already started or that are starting soon. So, we just wanted to get this out to you guys as soon as possible, give you our thoughts and kind of a nice visualization here of how your rookie draft might go. Of course,
Yeah.
every league's going to be different, but just kind of a template to follow. So, with that being said, let's get into the settings here. You want to do the same
Okay.
settings as last time?
Yeah. Yeah. What do we do? Do we do 1.5 tight end premium?
Yes.
The
So
super
12
flex.
team, Superflex, 1.5 tight end premium. Let's do start 11.
Start 11. Sure.
So yeah, so it's a little bit deeper starting rosters.
Okay.
Um, no point per carry, none of that fancy stuff. Is that cool with
Yeah.
you?
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds good to me.
Okay. All right, so yeah, your standard 12 team, Superflex, start 11.5 tight end premium, so 1.5 scoring for the tight ends. Um, I like it. Okay. I think you had the 101 last time, right?
Did I? Okay.
I think so. So I'll
Yeah,
take it this time.
that
That's
sounds good.
cool.
Yeah, sure. Go for it.
Okay. Yeah, and so obviously again, this is based on the results of the NFL draft. We actually have real landing spots, real draft capital to go based off now, real depth charts that are starting to take
Yeah.
form. So it's a lot. Definitely, if you guys watched the last video, the mock draft that we did from Chad Reuter, things went a lot differently
Come
than
on,
that, which is
Chad.
kind of what we
Yeah.
expected.
Yeah, Chad let us down a
Um,
little bit in that draft.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Things were a little bit different. Primarily,
Mhm.
Will Levis falling out of the first round. But
Yeah.
anyway, definitely some interesting landing spots. And again, let's not talk too much here. Let's get into it. But
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, the early reactions I've seen is a lot of people are not happy with the way things shaked out in the NFL draft.
Hmm.
These landing spots. I actually think it's a bit of an overreaction. I think it's still a pretty deep class, and there's some landing spots that aren't great. Some guys that didn't get the draft capital we thought they would. But all in all, I think it's still a pretty strong class. Do you feel the same?
Yeah, yeah. I think at first yesterday, looking at rankings and kind of hearing feedback from people, I think I started to overreact. So I've been trying to tell myself to calm down a little bit, and I think what's tough, I guess, just to intro it. I think for me, something I've noticed is that a lot of the guys, especially from our last video, a lot of the guys that we were kind of high on profile wise kind of fell in the draft slash had bad landing spots, and then a lot of the guys who got the good draft capital then were guys we were kind of iffy on profile wise.
Right. Yeah, good point. It definitely complicates and muddies the waters a little bit.
Yeah.
One thing I will say, last thing I'll say before we get started,
Uh-huh.
I stand by this pretty strongly, and I have to remind myself sometimes because it's easier said than done. But
Yeah.
when you're evaluating these prospects, when you're deciding who to take in your rookie draft, I think the most important is talent and the prospect profile and how you viewed them before the NFL draft. I think that's most important. And then after that is the draft capital, and the last is the landing spot. I think a lot of the times people overvalue the landing spot, and I mean, we saw that a few years ago where everyone before the draft had Jonathan Taylor above CEH, and then all of a sudden CEH gets drafted higher to the Chiefs, and he becomes the 101 in most leagues, and we see how that turned out. And obviously that's not always the case, but I think sometimes it's important to trust your instincts, trust your guts, and remember how you viewed these players before the NFL draft, while also obviously incorporating what the NFL is telling us based on draft capital, and I think landing spot is the least important for me. How do you feel about that?
No, yeah, I would definitely agree. I think that kind of goes to the point of where I was saying to not overreact, and like you said too, where I think a lot of these landing spots and draft capital kind of sucked overall for most of these guys. But I think, we have to remember not to, because these guys still have the same athleticism and profiles before the draft and after. So even if these guys fell, they're still, a lot of these guys are pretty monstrous on the field. So I think we have to not overreact too much.
Right.
Oh, and also I was going to say then for you guys, just to explain on the screen here, we have all the landing spots listed out by position. So then just to explain the colors a little bit, the green is kind of some of our elite landing spots, so some of the top draft capital. And then we have the blue is more the middle tier, and then the purple is kind of more the lower end tier. And then for the wide receivers, extended the colors a little bit more to where the yellow or the orange is kind of more of kind of like an iffy range because me and Paul kind of follow where once it kind of goes past pick 50 or so, it gets a little questionable for wide receivers, and it gets into the range where they have a pretty low hit rate. And then the red on the bottom is where we would basically call these guys roster cloggers, and we do not want to draft these guys.
Yes. And to be fair, to speak back to Scott Connor, roster clogger is a phrase he came up with. And we'll kind of get into that stuff as we go through the draft here. But it's basically, it's broken down by kind of the tiers and the draft capital that these guys got, and to some extent the round that they went in. But all right, without further ado, let's get started. So if I have the 101, again, just like we said before the NFL draft, it's a pretty easy Bijan Robinson for me. I still think he should be the 101 in all formats. Some people would take Anthony Richardson 101, but I think given the draft capital, good landing spot, he should get plenty of opportunities. I think he's a pretty easy 101.
I like it. I think that makes my choice pretty hard at 2 here. I would definitely be between Richardson and Young. I think I'm going to have to go Bryce Young still. I know Richardson had a great landing spot to the Colts, but I think just based off how much the Panthers gave up for Bryce Young, I think they're kind of building that team from the ground up this year, and they have a great coaching staff. The Colts do too, but I think just raw talent quarterback-wise, I like Young a lot more. So I'm going to go Young, which I think would be more of a safer pick.
Yeah, that's fair. It's the safer pick. I think it's also maybe the spicier pick. I think most people would probably go Anthony Richardson 102.
Yeah.
But I get what you're saying, right? The stability of Bryce Young. He probably has, maybe doesn't have the same ceiling as A-Rich, but he probably has a higher floor.
Yeah.
I get it. Okay, well then, I'm definitely going Anthony Richardson at 103. Again, I don't think I have to say much here, but the ceiling is really high, and the fact that he got the draft capital means, in my opinion, the Colts are fully bought into him. And he's got solid weapons, and he's also got Shane Steichen as his offensive coordinator, and that's obviously the guy who just came over from Philly, working with Jalen Hurts, who's another very similar mobile quarterback. So I think if he falls to the 103, I think Anthony Richardson is kind of a no-brainer for me.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I think there, if you don't need a quarterback, then you could probably go Gibbs or JSN. But I think if you are in need of a quarterback or is taking the best player available, I would say Richardson. And then at 4, kind of going along with that point too, if you kind of really need a running back or a wide receiver and are set at quarterback, I would go one of the other guys, but I'm going to go Stroud here just straight value-wise in the Superflex league.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And actually we saw in the rookie draft we're in right now, CJ Stroud went at the 106, which I think is kind of preposterous. And he's a steal at the 106 in my opinion. But right, like some of these your leagues are going to shake out differently. These drafts are going to be different in every league. Yeah. And definitely the Jahmyr Gibbs landing spot in draft capital is a point of contention. And that's what I'm debating here. I think for me, I think the 105 is kind of the hardest spot to be in right now in the first round. I think it's a tier of 6. So I think in the top 6 you're pretty good. But the 105 is hard for me because it's really a toss-up between Gibbs and JSN. And I don't want to take the easy way out and say it just kind of depends on your team roster build. I mean, at that point, right, they're similar enough for me where I would make the tiebreaker what position you need more. But typically in your rookie draft, you want to go best player available, not based on positional need. So just use that as a tiebreaker. But man, it's tough. I think I'm gonna have to go Gibbs here.
Okay. Wow.
No, actually, I'm sorry. I'm gonna go JSN.
No? All right.
Yeah, see, I'm tilting here. It's a
hard
spot for me.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go JSN solely because of the fact that I think wide receivers have a longer shelf life,
Mhm.
and I think JSN just had so much hype coming into the draft. Whereas actually Gibbs, I feel like a lot of people were fading Gibbs leading up to the draft because of his
Yeah.
size, because he probably wasn't going to go in the first round, and then all of a sudden the Lions, surprised all of us and took him at the 12th pick. So again, trying to stick to what I thought going into the draft, not letting the draft capital or the landing spot change too much for me. So I'm going to have to roll JSN here. I just think the wide receiver position has more longevity, and if he hits his ceiling, I think JSN would be worth a lot more than Gibbs ever would be.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I like
So
it.
you would have done the same thing there? You'd go JSN over Gibbs?
Yeah, I would. Yeah.
Okay. Are you lying to the people because you took Gibbs 103 at our draft recording?
I know. Yeah. It was in our draft this morning. I took Gibbs at the 103 actually, but to be fair, that's a point per carry. It's kind of boosting a little bit.
Give the context of your quarterbacks.
Yeah, I have Lamar, Burrow, and Hurts. So I do not need a quarterback in that league, and I have no running back.
And you tried to trade out of the pick, and no one would trade with you. So
I did, yeah.
I'm just messing with you. So, but in a vacuum, you'd go JSN over Gibbs.
I would, yeah. I would go Jason.
Okay. All right. So, are you going Gibbs here at the 106?
Yeah, here I would go Gibbs. Yeah, because I mean the crazy landing spot, as I'm sure everyone has heard. But yeah, me and Paul were watching the draft at his house, and we were having some wing stop, and then on that pick, we went nuts. Oh my god! And we were jumping out of our chairs and stuff. I don't think anybody expected him to go at 12 to the Lions.
No one did. Yeah, we almost choked on our wings.
Yeah.
By the way, we are not a paid sponsor of Wingstop. But,
No, sadly.
It's just happened to be what we were eating. But anyway. All right, yeah. No, I like it. I think, and again, I think for me at least, that's that tier of the top 6. So now at the 107, okay, it's tough again for me. The two big dilemmas for me are JSN versus Gibbs, and then after those two, Quentin Johnston versus Jordan Addison.
Yeah.
Because I like both guys a lot, and they both got good landing spots, and they both got very similar draft capital. Quentin Johnston went 2 picks ahead to the Chargers. Jordan Addison went 2 picks after that to the Vikings. Going into the draft, they were very similar to me. I had Jordan Addison slightly above, but based on the landing spots and just kind of like the scheme fit and the quarterback situation especially, I'm actually going to go Quentin Johnston here.
Ooh, okay.
I think I think they're very similar prospects, and they were similar for me coming into the draft. So now I'm using the draft capital and the landing spot as a tiebreaker. And I think obviously Quentin Johnston got a little bit higher draft capital, not much of a difference there. But I really like the landing spot. Herbert is obviously a very good quarterback, and I think that quarterback spot is going to be more stable over the next couple of years for QJ as opposed to Jordan Addison in Minnesota, because obviously we don't know what's going to happen with Kirk Cousins, especially after this upcoming season. Secondly, Keenan Allen and Mike Williams are both cut candidates in 2024. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that I think they're both going to get cut, but I think there's a very good chance that at least one of them gets cut. And I could see within the next 2 years, Quentin Johnston has the potential to be the number 1 wide receiver on that offense for Justin Herbert. Jordan Addison is never going to be the number 1 wide receiver on Minnesota while Justin Jefferson is there. So, and they've got T.J. Hawkinson, who's also a target hog. So
that's a good point.
At that point, yeah, that's kind of the tiebreaker for me. So I'd go QJ at the 107.
Oh, yeah, and then I would just go Addison next after that. Like you said, I think that's the next little tier here is QJ and Addison. So I would go Addison as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Addison's profile is probably more of a wide receiver too. So I think that's actually a very good landing spot considering. Well, I know some people are high on KJ Osborne, but I think he's more of a wide receiver 3. So I actually like the landing spot because obviously JJ is there, but I think Addison will be a nice complement to have another target in that offense with Kirk Cousins, who's been super efficient.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's a good point you brought up. Yeah, Kirk Cousins is historically a very efficient quarterback, and that should go well with Jordan Addison's game and play style, what he's good at. So, yeah, I think he's a good pick there. It's interesting. I think for us, obviously, here, and it seems like for most people, most mock drafts or drafts that I've seen up to this point, these 4 first-round wide receivers, pretty much everyone has Zay Flowers as the last one in the tier. And obviously, we kind of feel similarly. I am going to take Zay Flowers here at the 109. Again, I mean, he obviously gets very good draft capital as well. I like him over the other players on the board here, but I don't like him as much as the other wide receivers. The other 3 big wide receivers, I had them all ahead of Zay Flowers coming into the draft. Zay Flowers, he is a small school guy. And he also stayed in college for all 4 years, which historically is kind of a red flag for wide receivers. You like to see those guys that declare early for the NFL draft, usually after their junior season, which he did not. So that combined with the fact that he went to a small school makes him a little lower for me. Now, I've heard some people saying they don't like the landing spot. I actually don't think it's that bad. I know there's target competition, but I think we talked about this on the last video. With Todd Monken coming in as the OC in Baltimore, they are going to be throwing a lot more. I'm very confident in that. So I think he can probably, make out a sizable role in that offense, and have some pretty good success year one. But definitely, I'd have him as the last of these 4 first-round wide receivers. All right, so 110. This is kind of a tough spot. What are you doing here?
Yeah, I think for me, I mean, if you guys look at our graphic here too, this is where we've picked the top 3 quarterbacks, picked the top 2 running backs, and then the top 4 wide receivers. So I think this is where there's a pretty big tier break. I think you really want one of these 9 guys. I think these are more of the safe options.
So your tier break is after the 109?
Yeah, I would say after
Like
the
your big tier
109.
break?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. Whereas I kind of have it after the 107, and then I have Quentin
Mm-hmm.
Johnson or I'm sorry, after the 106, and then I have QJ,
Yeah.
Jordan Addison, and Zay Flowers kind of in their own tier. But you include them as part of that first big tier.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I think the first tier is I think the first 6 guys. Yeah, and then these 3 are kind of in their own tier, and then I think there's
Oh,
another
okay.
another drop off here.
Got you. Yeah. Okay.
Um,
All right. Yeah. No, I agree. And this is why we were saying in the last video, like if you can trade these late first round picks for 24 firsts, I would do it.
Yeah.
Also, if you can trade them, move down a couple spots in the second, because at this point, right, like you were talking about earlier in the NFL draft, we saw Gibbs and Bijan, they got draft capital, good landing spots. Now that Detroit traded away DeAndre Swift. After this, though, these running backs are kind of in a very similar tier. Like they were, I think we were both talking last week. Like they were in a similar tier for us going into the draft, and now most people had Zach Charbonnet as the RB3. However, most people also now hate Zach Charbonnet's landing spot, understandably so, because he's behind Kenneth Walker in Seattle. So, again, sorry, not to
Oh, that's
talk,
fine.
cut you off here, but again, even if you're on the clock in these rookie drafts, I don't think it's a bad thing to move down a couple spots, especially if you're considering taking a running back here. Maybe if it's different if you want to go Will Levis or another wide receiver or even a tight end. But if you're thinking running back here, or honestly even tight end, because it's a pretty deep tight end class, doesn't hurt to move back a couple picks and gain some extra capital, maybe later in the second or the third, or even like in 2024. So yeah, but anyway, with that being said, I guess what are you thinking here?
I mean, because the format wise, we're only doing a 1.5 tight end premium total. So I think it's a little. I mean, Dalton Kincaid had a great landing spot with the Bills, but I think it's still a little too early for the tight ends here.
Mm-hmm.
I think I would just go Charbonnet because I think there is a big drop off from Gibbs to Charbonnet, but also I think there's kind of a big drop off from Charbonnet to the other people still, like Tajay Spears or A-Chain. I think those guys have more question marks profile wise. So now the landing spot kind of sucks for Charbonnet, but I think profile wise he's ahead of those guys.
Okay, all right. And again, we are not prospect evaluators, but I've heard some people that kind of make their career out of that, talking about how Zach Charbonnet is a better receiver than Ken Walker. So there's a good chance he could, from day one, carve out the receiving role in Seattle, and then maybe gain more rushing opportunities as the year goes on. So interesting. I would not have taken Charbonnet there.
Okay.
I understand why you did, but I would have taken Will Levis over him. That's what I'm going to take now. Again, it sucks that he went in the second round, right? He fell farther than pretty much anyone was expecting. But at the end of the day, it's a good landing spot. I mean, it's the team that we thought would take him. We just thought the Titans would trade up to take him in the first round, not the second round. But they still traded up to get him. Obviously, compared to the mock draft we did from Chad Reuter a week ago, that had him going 102, we took him a lot earlier in that mock draft compared to here, obviously, where he goes in the second round. I just think at this point in the draft, again, the running backs are kind of murky. It's too early for me to take a tight end in a 1.5 tight end premium, and the wide receivers are pretty murky. And I don't want to be the one to choose the first of the remaining wide receivers or running backs or the first of the tight ends. I'd rather take the quarterback. Again, I think if Will Levis gets a starting job or maybe even hits his ceiling upside-wise, could be very valuable for fantasy. And to get him at the 111, I think it's a bet I'm willing to take at this point.
Yeah, I think the end of this first round here and the beginning of the second is very shaky. Where I think if you're in these spots, you kind of, like you said, you have to be the first one to take these guys off the board. kind of at the beginning of the tier of a tier that's probably about 12 guys deep. So
Right.
I don't think there's really much of a difference between the early second and the late second.
So let me ask you a question then really quick before we close out this first round. So
Mhm.
at the 110 there where you picked Charbonnet, if you were offered the 204 and the 207 for the 110, would you make that trade? Assuming the first 9 picks
Mm.
go as we had them here?
I would, yeah.
Yeah, solid value there.
Yeah, because I guess for this video we're doing a start 11, so I would take the two guys there. If it was a start 9 or something, then I would probably just keep the 110, take Charbonnet.
Good point. Yeah, the depth matters a lot more in start 11. Okay. All right, so what do you think of the 112 here?
Um, I know it's really tough. You're kind of saying the weight on the tight ends, that it's a little too early, but I honestly feel like the tight ends are the best value here while surveying the board. So I'm gonna go Kincaid.
Okay. All right.
I think Kincaid got a great landing spot, and he was what, probably about 10 picks or so ahead of Mayer. So I would prefer Kincaid over Mayer currently.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's fair. Again, I get it, especially in a tight end premium league. For me, in a 1.5, I am fading the tight ends in this range.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of glad you took the first one off the board, so I didn't have to. But I am so here's the okay. Do you want to run through the first round really quickly for everyone? Just say the picks in order.
Sure. So we got Bijan 101. We got Bryce Young 102. Anthony Richardson at the 103. C.J. Stroud at the 104. JSN at the 105, Jahmyr Gibbs at the 106, and then Johnston, Addison, and Flowers at the 107, 108, 109. Zach Charbonnet at the 110, Will Levis at the 111, and Kincaid at the 112.
All right. Pretty solid first round. Definitely different than how it looked last week before
Oh,
the
yeah, for
NFL draft. Actually, not that much different, other than Will Levis, but a
That's
little bit
true,
different.
actually. Yeah.
Okay, so at the 201 here, I am probably going to go back into the running back pool here.
Okay.
And I am debating Devon Achane and Kendre Miller.
Mm-hmm.
I like both their landing spots. Kendre Miller went to the Saints. Devon Achane went to the Dolphins. They both went in the third round. So fairly solid draft capital, to go on day 2. I'm probably... See, where I struggle here is Kendre Miller is higher in my rankings, but I think the community likes Devon Achane's landing spot more. So that's, again, something to consider in your own drafts and maybe your own league mates, what they might value more. And, again, I know we keep saying it, but another reason to trade out of these picks if you can and move down a couple spots, because you're still going to get, solid value when these guys are in the same tier. It's helpful to get that extra capital later on, or another player. I'm going to go Kendre Miller. At the end of the day, I'm going to have to stick with my guns, and I liked him a lot better than Devon Achane coming into the draft. Devon Achane is undersized. Now, I think Miami is a really good offense for him to be in, but Kendre Miller, I mean, it's basically Jamal Williams there to compete with, assuming Alvin Kamara gets some sort of suspension, which we don't know for sure, but regardless, Kamara's an aging running back. And I could see the Saints kind of transitioning him more into like a receiving back because he's so good at that, when maybe they have Kendre Miller and Jamal Williams splitting first and second down reps. And Jamal Williams, I mean, I love him as a person. He's an awesome. If you've ever seen like interviews with him, he's hilarious. But he really wasn't fantasy relevant until last year when he broke Barry Sanders' touchdown record for the Lions. So I don't think Kendre Miller would have too difficult of a time beating him out as the season goes on. And going into 2024, he could be the number 2 or maybe even the number 1 running back on that team. So I like Kendre here.
Okay, I like it. I think following up what you said about what your league mates might prefer, I think I'm going to go A-Chain here.
Sure.
I think the wide receivers are still very murky for me. I think it's a little early for me to take them. So I personally like drafting the running backs just to kind of backfill the running back rooms. Because I guess on a lot of my teams I kind of punt the RBs, so it's nice to fill out the running back rooms with kind of some of these middle guys who like A-Chain or Spears kind of has some high upside and PPR upside as well. So I'm gonna go A-Chain.
Right. Okay, I like it. This is the territory where, especially since you already took Kincaid, I'm kind of debating taking another tight end. But there's still 2 of them left on the board that I like a lot, so I'm willing to just wait and roll the dice that, definitely at least one of them will make it to my next pick. But So I'm actually going to go Jonathan Mingo here.
Ooh, okay.
But I'll be honest, this pick doesn't feel great. I like Jonathan Mingo's draft capital. He went higher than I think most people expected. And I mean, Scott Connor talks about this. A lot of other dynasty analysts talk about this, and I think we both subscribe to this idea too. That with wide receivers, you really want them to get top 40 draft capital, at least top 50. And Jonathan Mingo did. I mean, he went 39th overall to the Panthers, and they don't have a super intimidating wide receiver room right now. So I think he could carve out a decent role for himself amongst Thielen and Chark and Terrace Marshall and Laviska. I think he could carve out a decent role for himself, and I like Bryce Young as his quarterback, so I'd go Mingo here.
I actually like that pick. I think because looking at the sheet here, he was the fifth wide receiver drafted, so I think it's a pretty good shot to take a chance on him here.
Sure.
Dang, these picks are just really tough. It's just like I said, this tier is about 12 people deep. It's really hard to select one. I think I'm gonna actually go Michael Mayer here. I think the middle is second is where I would take a shot on him. He's supposed to be an elite tight end prospect. I think the Raiders is a very good landing spot because they traded away Darren Waller, and now they have Jimmy G, who had Kittle before on the 49ers. So I think he'll probably throw to Mayer quite a bit.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, I like it, and that was one of the two guys I was debating.
Mm-hmm.
To make it easy here, I might kick myself in the future for not taking another running back here because I think a lot of them they have decent landing spots in draft capital, but I'm gonna go with Sam Laporta then since you took Michael Mayer.
Wow, okay.
In the NFL draft, Laporta actually went one pick before Michael Mayer to the Lions. I think he'll slot in nicely on that offense. They're missing Hawkinson from last year, and J-Mo's suspended, so it's basically Amon-Ra and I don't even know who else they have in the wide receiver room other than J-Mo, who's like we said suspended. So I think Laporta could come in and make a contribution right away. And this is the point, kind of like you said too in the draft, where the 0.5 tight end premium starts to play a role for me. Mm-hmm. So I'm pretty comfortable with Laporta there. I think. Would you agree? I think Kincaid, Mayer, and Laporta are kind of the first tier of tight ends, and then after that, there's a bit of a tier break. Would you agree, or do you see it differently?
I would agree. Yes, I think Luke Musgrave is interesting too, and got pretty high draft capital, right behind Mayer to the Packers. But then what's questionable is the Packers also took Tucker Kraft in the third round. So I think their idea is probably to have those guys compete, and kind of whichever one comes out on top, kind of will play more. So I think I would probably have kind of tear him down a little bit because of that.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. All right. What you thinking here?
I'm up. Let's see. I think I'm gonna go Tajay Spears. I actually kind of like that landing spot behind Derrick Henry because the Titans run the ball a lot. I think Spears is gonna be a great PPR guy. If he can stay healthy, I think is the big question because he had the ACL tear, and some people are saying that his knee is basically completely shot. But I think actually with the landing spot, I actually like it because I think he'll be a good addition to Henry. I guess I'm kind of thinking more of like a Zeke and Pollard-esque kind of backfield, which I think Spears kind of fits that role nicely of a complement piece to a big down back like Henry.
Sure. Yeah. No, I like it. The injury stuff kind of concerns me about him too, but at the end of the day, I think the landing spot is pretty decent. And Derrick Henry has been in trade rumors, so you never know, he might get traded. In the future. Okay, if you went Tajay Spears, I'm gonna go Roshan Johnson next here. Okay. I like the landing spot with the Bears. It's obviously not the best landing spot. You obviously have Khalil Herbert and Deonta Foreman there, but I liked his tape and the stuff I saw from him in college. A lot of people who are smarter about this than I am or know more about this than I am said that if he was in any other school not sharing a backfield with Bijan Robinson, he probably would have been featured a lot more and gone higher in the NFL draft. But I like the landing spot. The draft capital's okay. He went early fourth round, and I think he can be a solid, maybe like a flex starter or solid depth bench piece at this point in the draft.
I like the Roshan pick. I think the next pick is pretty tough here. I think I'm going to go back to the wide receivers because we've kind of punted them a little bit here. Because we had Zay Flowers at the 109, and then we had a few picks, and then it was Mingo, and now I've had quite a few picks in between. So I think I'm going to go. It's tough to pick out which wide receiver here.
Right.
So I actually had one guy in mind, but now I'm kind of changing my mind.
Yeah, the pressure's on, homie.
Kind of between, I think, Mims and Reed.
Okay.
And Rashee Rice is actually pretty. No, I think I'm gonna go Rashee Rice. Take a shot on him. He goes to the Chiefs. I wouldn't.
Okay.
I would be careful for you guys. I wouldn't draft. I wouldn't take Rice at the early second or something like that. But I think towards the end of the second round at the 208 here, I wouldn't go too nuts. Like, oh my God, he went to the Chiefs. Draft him in the late first, something like that. But I would take a shot on him here, and he got the good draft capital. He was picked 55, so it's slightly past our kind of threshold there of like top 50 picks, but it's still very close, right? Where I think you can kind of adjust it slightly.
Yeah, sure. Are you getting Sky Moore flashbacks with that pick?
A little bit. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough, right? Yeah, obviously the
Yeah.
landing spot, the Chiefs are always kind of bump people up when they draft guys. All right, again, personally, I would not be taking Rashee Rice here.
Okay.
I would still punt him even further down the board, along with the other wide receivers here, just because that's kind of the way I like to play, and I think at this range, these are the receivers that are they're at a high risk of becoming roster cloggers, right? Where you're basically like, you have them on your bench and you can never start them. Now, people are going to, look at things through a rose-colored lens sometimes and paint a picture of how these guys can succeed. Doesn't mean they can't, right? I could totally be wrong. But I think the running backs at this spot are a better bet. And actually, for the most part, I mean, maybe I take it player by player, but for the most part, I prefer running backs that go in the 3rd to 4th round as opposed to wide receivers who go in the 2nd round past the top 50 NFL draft picks. Just for me personally, because I think they're more like those running backs are more likely to get an opportunity. And with all that being said, I know I'm talking about the running backs here. I'm actually going to go Hendon Hooker with the next pick. He slipped obviously a little bit here. He slipped in the rookie draft that we're doing today as well in one of our leagues. For good reason, right? He didn't get the draft capital. He didn't go in the 1st round. He's an older prospect. He's firmly behind Jared Goff, at least to start his career. But overall, I think the Lions have a good offense. And, if he does get going in the early 2nd round like that, I think he's going to get an opportunity to start at some point. And we know because of the rushing ability that he has a lot of upside. He could be really useful for fantasy. So this late in the draft, what are we at, the 209? I think he's worth the risk. So I'm pretty comfortable taking him here.
All right, I like it. I think next, like you said, it's really hard to decide between the running backs and the wide receivers here because there's still a few wide receivers who are in our blue range here who've got pretty decent draft capital, and then there's some guys in the yellow who basically I would say had better profiles but then kind of fell in the draft. Somebody like Josh Downs or Jalen Hyatt. So I think I'm gonna go back to the running backs here. I think Tank Bigsby is someone to go for next. He's going to be behind ETN, but ETN has had some injury history, and maybe he won't be able to kind of withhold kind of like a 70% workload. So I think there isn't really anybody behind ETN that's very threatening. So Tank Bigsby, I think is a decent shot at the end of the second here.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think after Bigsby, there's another tier break for the running backs. I mean, there are some guys that we like that went later on that just didn't get great draft capital. So I think Bigsby is the last one in a tier there of guys who are probably, I mean, I would say in the 3rd or 4th tier of running backs. I mean, I think Bijan's in his own tier at the top, and then Gibbs is in his own tier. And then you kind of got guys in the 3rd tier. And then I think Bigsby's the last one in kind of that next tier of running backs there. So I like that pick. For me now, I'm struggling.
It's hard.
Saying that, I know. I feel like we're saying that with every pick now, both of us. But it is hard. Jeez. At the end of the day, I am going to go with Luke Musgrave here, the tight end. I think it's interesting. I was obviously debating Luke Musgrave and Jaden Reed, the wide receiver.
Okay.
Both went to your hometown Packers.
Yeah.
And Luke Musgrave actually went a few picks earlier. And given the tight end premium and the fact that we're, late second round here, I'm fine taking a tight end here. I know he's been knocked down the board a little bit because the Packers also took Tucker Kraft in the third round. At least from what I've seen and heard about Luke Musgrave, he's more of a receiving tight end, and so I wonder almost if maybe they brought in two guys because they want better blocking for the tight end position as well. But I think Luke Musgrave, between the two at least, is the one that's more likely to be the receiving option. So I like taking him here. And I take him over Jaden Reed because, he went a few picks earlier, so that tells me that the Packers prioritized him more. But also I'm just not – I like Luke Musgrave's profile as a tight end, and I don't really like Jaden Reed's profile as a wide receiver, and I think he's another one of those guys. I mean, he went exactly pick 50, but I think he's another one of those guys that could become a roster clogger. So, Luke Musgrave there for me.
I think, this is the spot where I think I would take a shot on some of these wide receivers who are still available. Because, like you said, I think after Bigsby, there's a little bit of a drop-off to Izzy and Chase Brown, who kind of fell with their draft capital. As Izzy went to the fifth round, actually. Because it was crazy. There's actually only one running back drafted in the fourth round, which was Roshan Johnson to the Bears. I think it's kind of crazy. There's a massive gap. There's a couple guys, if you guys look on the graphic, there's a couple guys in the third round, and then one in the fourth, and then it drops down to then there's a couple in the fifth. So a lot of these running backs kind of fell to the fifth, to the fifth, sixth round. So I think
that was definitely surprising to see.
It was, yeah. I'm between. Here is where it's tough to decide between Downs, Mims, Hyatt, and Reed.
Okay, so you're thinking wide receiver.
Yeah, I'm thinking wide receiver.
Okay.
I'm between Mims and Jaden Reed. I think here's where I'm gonna. I know Jaden Reed got the better draft capital, but I like Mims' profile better, so I'm gonna take it.
Okay, Marvin Mims.
Yeah. I don't think it really feels great. It's really tough to choose between those guys. I wouldn't really, fault somebody for picking one over the other.
Sure. Okay. No, and that closes out the second round. I'll run it back here really quick.
Okay.
So 201 we had Kendra Miller, 202 Devon A-Chain, 203 Jonathan Mingo, 204 Michael Mayer, 205 Sam Laporta, two tight ends back to back. Then the 206 Tajay Spears, 207 Roshan Johnson, 208 Rashee Rice, 209 Hendon Hooker, 210 Tank Bigsby, 211 Luke Musgrave, and 212 Marvin Mims. So it's definitely an interesting second round.
Mm-hmm.
But like we said, right, a lot of picks that didn't really feel great in that round. But again, I know it sounds counterintuitive, but the fact that most of these picks don't feel good is why if someone really values that Kendra Miller at the 201 or that Devon A-Chain at the 202 or Jonathan Mingo at the 203, whatever it is, trade back a couple picks, because most of these picks don't feel very good. So why not take two shots at getting someone that can crack your starting lineup as opposed to one? That's kind of my mentality. And again, that's something Scott Connor talks about a lot too, in terms of, I'm not going to be the one who's arrogant enough to think that I know for sure that I can pick the right player at these picks. If my league mates are convinced that they know who's going to be the right player, I'll make those trades. And it feels sometimes uncomfortable or risky in the moment trading down, because sometimes you really have, like we said, we have tiers for these guys and some that we value more than others. But at the end of the day, in this range, I'd rather take two or maybe even three shots as opposed to one. And I'm assuming you feel similarly.
100%, yeah. Yeah, I would agree. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, let's crank out this third round real quick, and then we can get to the winners and losers.
All right, let's do it.
So, I don't like these wide receivers here, but since he's on the board at the 301, I'm going to take Jaden Reed.
Okay.
Like we said, pretty solid draft capital. He's a top 50 pick, so maybe just around that cutoff that we have of the wide receivers that we like. So, given the draft capital, not in love with the profile, but with the draft capital, I'll take him here at the 301.
I think next, just to bang it out, I'm gonna go Josh Downs. I know it's tough because he kind of fell in the draft, but I think the Colts. I think he goes to where Richardson went. There could be some questions on how the passing game is going to be for the Colts. But I think he could carve out a role, and I think prospect-wise, he's probably one of the best prospects still on the board.
Okay, all right, I like it. This one maybe is a spicy pick. I'm gonna go Chase Brown at the 303. Okay. I like his landing spot to the Bengals. This, obviously we don't know what's gonna happen with Joe Mixon. Obviously, if Joe Mixon is not on the team or suspended. That's a huge bump up for Chase Brown. But regardless, even if Joe Mixon is there, they don't really have any depth behind him. Samaje Perine is gone. Travion Williams hasn't shown anything. Neither has Chris Evans. So I think Chase Brown could very easily come in there and be the RB2 from day one. And that's also you're baking in the fact that the hidden upside if Joe Mixon is suspended or off the team. So I like Chase Brown there.
I actually like that a lot. Yeah, very nice. I think I'm going to follow that up with, I think, kind of the last running back in this tier, which was Izzy, who I think we both really like his profile. Not the best landing spot, though, to the Jets. I think in our other video, I think, what do we have him at the 2-4, I want to say. I think it was a whole round earlier.
Yeah.
Because
yeah,
say.
Yep. No, I was just gonna say because that mock draft that we did, he went second round, I think, to the Cowboys. So like,
Yeah.
that's a far cry from going fifth round to the Jets and being stuck behind Breece Hall and, maybe splitting time with Michael Carter.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So Izzy there. I'm gonna go Luke Schoonmaker next. He went in the late second round to the Cowboys. I don't like his profile as much as some of the other tight ends that have already been drafted, but at the end of the day, it's solid draft capital, solid landing spot. They don't have many receiving options outside of CeeDee Lamb and Brandon Cooks.
Mm-hmm.
And he'll probably be competing with Jake Ferguson and Peyton Hendershot, so it'll kind of be interesting to see how that tight end battle plays out over the summer. But at this point in the draft, I think it's a good bet to make. And honestly, I'm kind of surprised he even fell this low, considering he's a second-round tight end and a 0.5 tight end premium. So I think if he were to fall this far in an actual draft, that'd be really good value for him. You struggling?
Yeah. I think I might go back to the wide receivers here.
Okay.
I think some of these running backs, I guess the remaining running backs I'll be looking at are Eric Gray, who went to the Giants in the 5th round, and then Evan Hull went to the Colts in the 5th round, or Chris Rodriguez went to the Commanders. And Zach Evans slipped down to the 6th round, which is way later than people thought. So I think I'm going to go back to the wide receivers. I think prospect-wise, I'm going to go Jalen Hyatt, even though he fell in the draft.
Right, it's funny. Most people thought he would go to the Giants, and he did, but most mock drafts had him going in the 1st round to the Giants. Instead, he went in the 3rd round to the Giants. So that's no bueno for Mr. Hyatt there.
No.
And obviously that's why you see him fall in this draft. All right, at that point then, I am going to go back to the tight end well. No, actually, I'm sorry. I'm going to go running back. And I'm debating some of the guys that you just said as well.
Okay.
At the end of the day, so between Eric Gray, Evan Hall, and Chris Rodriguez, I like Eric Gray's profile the best, and he also went first of these three. So I'm going to take Eric Gray here. He went in the 5th round to the Giants. And again, similar to Chase Brown, I don't think there's really much competition there for him to carve out the backup role behind Saquon. So I think that's, he's one injury away from being a starter in most dynasty leagues. So I'm pretty comfortable taking him.
I think I'm going to also follow it up with a running back. I'm going to go... I like Chris Rodriguez a lot. I kind of like him as a sleeper.
Okay.
I think the Commanders is a pretty good landing spot for him behind Antonio Gibson, who hasn't really been used as much recently by the Commanders. Brian Robinson did pretty well. Obviously, he had the injury last year from the terrible shooting. So I think he could kind of work out a role if he does well in training camp.
Sure. Okay. All right. And, it's interesting, right? I'm looking at this board here, and, I don't blame you. I don't disagree with you because I just did the same thing. But isn't it interesting? We're taking 5th round running backs over a couple 3rd round wide receivers and even a 2nd round tight end.
Mm-hmm.
But it's so again, we could end up looking silly for doing that. But I just, at this point in the draft, these wide receivers, to me, are roster clogger territory. And tight ends, not only is it very difficult to be a tight end in the NFL, but a lot of them take a while to even break out or develop if they're going to at all. So the running back is kind of more of a year-to-year game with that position, so I'd rather take the bet on those guys. But it is interesting, right? We're taking 5th round running backs over a 2nd round tight end and 3rd round wide receivers. And with that being said, do I continue that trend or do I break away from that trend? I am going to break away. So I'm not taking the 2nd round tight end, but I am taking one of the 3rd round tight ends. I'm going to take Darnell Washington.
Okay.
He went in the 3rd to the Steelers, and not the draft capital that I was expecting. Not a great landing spot being there behind Pat Freiermuth, but I really liked his profile coming into the NFL draft. And I think, it might take some time. Again, at this point in the draft, these aren't picks that you're guaranteed to hit on anyway. But at this point in the draft, I'm okay taking a shot on him that he's able to carve out a role in a Pittsburgh offense that, for the most part, is usually pretty efficient. I know the last couple of years they've been down with Noodle Arm, Big Ben, and now Kenny Pickett. But overall, they're a well-coached team, and I think he's just an athletic freak. And so I think he's going to be able to do things during training camp, OTAs, to force his way onto the field, even if it's in 2 tight end sets. So I'll take the gamble on Washington here.
All right, on the freak, I like it. So yeah, there's 3 picks left here in third.
Yeah.
I really don't, as I know, the next couple guys up on the ADP that you guys can't see is Cedric Tillman, Kayshon Boutte, Tyler Scott. I mean, for the receivers, I think those guys are more roster cloggers for me. Or I think the percentage that they're going to be in your lineup and kind of more hitting at like a wide receiver 3 range at best, I think is pretty low. So I think that's ultimately why we're going towards the running backs here. For the tight ends, is Kraft still available? Yeah, Kraft is still available, which is an interesting one.
Still there, yeah.
I think I'm gonna go Zach Evans next. I actually kind of like that landing spot because I know that the Rams have been pretty iffy on Cam Akers. So I know prospect-wise, Zach Evans was pretty high for most people. So I'm gonna go Zach Evans here. Okay. I think I don't know. Maybe we should have taken him a slightly earlier, but he did also fall to the 6th round. So it's tough.
Yeah, I'm out on Zach Evans personally.
Okay.
I didn't like him coming into the draft and the fact that he goes in the 6th round. But you're right, it's not a crowded running back room. It's basically him and Akers, and Kyron Williams is not much of a threat in my opinion. But I just don't like Zach Evans. Don't like that offense. But I respect the pick. And now I'm gonna do something crazy. Probably, most people would say, or at least we would say, because we are all totally against the roster clogger wide receivers.
Yeah.
But I am going to go way down the board here, and since this is my last pick of the draft, I'm going to take Kayshon Boutte.
Okay.
He slid. I mean, we kind of expected him to slide in the draft. He went even farther than I was expecting. He went in the 6th round to the Patriots. The reason I'm taking him here is because of the name cachet. People know that name. People who have played Devy or have watched college football, they've known the name Kayshon Boutte for a while. And at this point in the draft, I'm willing to take him over other wide receivers that went early in the draft, because if Kayshon Boutte is able to get any hype going over the summer, if he's able to make a couple, highlight reel plays, anything like that, I think his value could go up, and I might be able to sell him for a profit. But literally, this is the point. Like Kayshon Boutte, I'm taking him at the 311 here. If someone offers me 2 24/3 for him, he's gone. That's fine. I'll take the win, right? Because at this point, I think he has such a minimal risk of actually hitting and being worthwhile for my team that I'll take him here just with the intention of hopefully trying to flip him later on. So maybe it's a crazy strategy, maybe it's a little bit too early, but I think in most drafts he's probably going to go around this range or even earlier just because people know the name. But I don't know if you had anything to say about that.
I actually like it. Yeah, I think I would agree that I think that's something that we have to keep in mind of. I think somebody like a Boutte, if he does, one cool catch, if there's some type of positive news about him during training camp, his value could shoot up to a 2nd, and then somebody can offer you a 24/2, boom, he's gone.
Yep.
I would agree with that.
Give me that booty at the 311. All right, bring us home, my friend.
The last pick.
Finishing this one off.
Let's see. I think just to fill out the running backs, I'm gonna go. I guess Deuce Vaughn is somebody kind of following that way of thinking that people will like. So I think I'm between Deuce Vaughn and Evan Hull. I'm gonna go Deuce Vaughn.
Interesting. I would have gone Evan Hull.
Okay.
What's your argument for Deuce Vaughn?
I just think that. Well, I guess the only problem is. Well, I guess we're gonna talk about it soon about our winners and losers, because I actually have Pollard as a loser. But I think Deuce Vaughn is.
Alert.
Yeah, loser.
I'm sorry. Carry on.
But I guess Evan Hull, I think that the PPR upside of Vaughn, I would choose him over Evan Hull.
Sure. Okay. Fair. You want to recap that 3rd round real quick?
Yeah, so we had Jaden Reed at the 301, Josh Downs at 302, Chase Brown, and then Izzy at the 303 and 304. Then the Schoonmaker 305, Jalen Hyatt at 306, Eric Gray at 307, Chris Rodriguez 308, Darnell Washington the Freak 309, Zach Evans 310, Keishawn Butte 311, Deuce Vaughn at 312 to round it out.
Nice. All right. So obviously, you guys in the comments, if you're watching this video, feel free to let us know what you think. Tell us the picks you agree with, picks you disagree with, roast us, compliment us, whatever. Just no personal insults. Only if you're gonna roast us, make it about the picks, not about us as people. Have some respect. But I think that was fun. Again, it's very interesting to see how things are shaking out here after the draft. And the draft just finished yesterday, so as the next couple days go on, some of these ADPs are going to shift. It's going to be interesting to see which players are moving up boards, which players are moving down the board. But right now, I feel pretty comfortable about this. Again, it thins out quickly. I would say, even as early as the late first round, it kind of thins out. So and for me, really, I think there's that big tier of the first 6 players. And maybe you can extend that to the top 9 if you include the other 3 first-round receivers. But it gets thin quickly. You would agree?
Yeah. 100%. I think, I guess strategy-wise for you guys, I would maybe think about, kind of like we said, if you can ship away like an early second, if somebody's going to give you a late second and a third, I think those types of trades, or even like a 203 for like 2 early thirds, I would maybe consider those, especially if you're in a start 11 where the depth matters more. Because comparing, like if you take Mingo, like I would prefer to have, let's say, Josh Downs and Izzy compared to Jonathan Mingo, something like that. So I'd maybe think about some of those types of trades.
Yeah, when it's in that range, like we said, it's better to have 2 shots at a starter than 1. So give me the, as they call them, the leverage trades, so to speak. All right, how many minutes into this thing are we?
51.
Oh, Jesus, we're already close to an hour. Okay. You want to run through the winners and losers real quick?
Let's do it.
Okay. I guess, to be fair, we're still making better time than last time. Last time we went over an hour and we only did 2 rounds. So.
Yeah.
Okay, so I will start us off here. Are we able to pull them up on the screen or no?
Yeah. One sec.
All right, so now that you guys saw our mock draft, we're going to run through quickly some winners and losers that we have from the draft. Now, these are vets. These are not rookies, but these are veterans that we think were impacted either positively or negatively based on the events of the draft. You can see them all on the screen there, but we'll give a little bit of an explanation for each one. So let's go ahead and start at the quarterback position. Now, what we tried to do here, we tried to make them under-the-radar winners. Like, we didn't want to pick guys that are super obvious winners or losers for, any of these categories. We wanted to pick the guys that are maybe a little bit more under the radar that you might not hear about as much, because everyone's coming out with videos about winners and losers from the draft. So we'd like to give you guys maybe people that the community is overlooking a bit to some extent. So for my first quarterback winner, I do have Geno Smith, which admittedly I know what I just said, but I have a backup option here in case Geno Smith is a little bit too obvious of a winner. But just to speak about Geno for a little bit, first of all, a lot of mock drafts had the Seahawks taking a quarterback. They did not. That shows investment in Geno. They added weapons to the offense. That shows investment in Geno. So I just like the way this team is headed. Obviously, they added the best wide receiver in the class, in my opinion, in JSN. Mm-hmm. They also added, while it sucks for Ken Walker, they added Zach Charbonnet, so just another weapon out of the backfield. And again, I think the biggest thing is that they didn't draft another quarterback, so I think Geno's a big winner from the draft. Now, my backup option that I have here is Baker Mayfield. Kind of a similar reason to Geno, not so much that the team added many weapons, but they didn't draft anyone. They didn't draft another quarterback, and they were one of those teams that was rumored to maybe try to trade up for a Hendon Hooker, or maybe even up to get a Will Levis, something like that. And the fact that they didn't do that shows me that, it's not a sexy pick, but I think Baker is a guy that you could probably lock in as a starter. He's some dude.
Some guy.
That State Farm commercial. Yeah. No, I think he's a guy that you can lock in as a starter. At least for the next year. Mm-hmm. So I think he's another winner from the draft at the quarterback position. So you want to discuss your winner, quarterback position?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, my under-the-radar winner for quarterback is Jimmy G on the Raiders. So I think kind of going off of Baker as well, the Raiders were a team rumored to maybe take a quarterback like Levis or Richardson and trade up, but they did not. And I think it's also great that they added Michael Mayer to the offense. So I think they have some great weapons with Mayer, Josh Jacobs, Adams as well, and then now they have Jacoby Myers as well, and Hunter Renfrow is still there as well. So I think they have a lot of great weapons on offense. So I think and his job security has kind of stayed put.
Sure, I like it. Yeah, that was one of the guys I was considering if you didn't take him. So then, moving on to my under the radar loser at the quarterback position. Loser just sounds like such a
Yeah,
harsh word.
I know it is harsh.
Um, my guy here is Matthew Stafford. Now, Matthew Stafford is not my loser because the Rams drafted Stetson Bennett in the fourth round. I don't really think that matters. I think they literally had no other quarterbacks on the roster, so they have to have someone to back up Matthew Stafford. The reason he's a loser for me is because the Rams just didn't draft any weapons, at least not early. Not that they had many early picks, right? The Rams are notorious for trading away all their picks, and hey, it paid off. They got that Super Bowl a couple years ago, but they really didn't draft any weapons for him. Now you have Zach Evans out of the backfield, but that was in the sixth round. And then as far as receivers go, I think who was it? I can't remember the guy's name right now. Oh, they took Puka Nakua I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, in the fifth round. And then they took Davis Allen, the tight end, also in the fifth round. So I'm not loving the moves from the team there. Stafford is obviously kind of an aging player. His offensive line was pretty terrible last year, and I don't feel like they really adequately addressed that in the draft either. Combined with the lack of weapons, it's basically it's Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp and Tyler Higbee, and that's about it. I think he's kind of a loser from the draft.
Yes, and mine is Mac Jones. Basically, for those, I think you could basically mirror those reasons, and that's exactly why I picked Mac Jones. As I think the Patriots wide receiver room is pretty iffy. They got Devontae Parker last year, so I think a lot of people expected them to maybe trade up for a wide receiver this year, but they really didn't. The only guy they drafted was Kayshon Boutte. I think was he in the fifth round. So they really didn't invest great capital into the receivers, and they also didn't draft any more running backs either. Sure. So I also looked up some of the other positions that they also drafted. They did take some guards and some offensive linemen, but they were kind of some of the later picks. I think in the fourth round and maybe the fifth or sixth round they took another guy. So I was hoping for Mac Jones because I like Mac Jones, but I don't think they really drafted anybody that kind of helps him out.
Yeah. I will say, I think the saving grace for Mac Jones is that he no longer has Matt Patricia as his offensive coordinator. Now he has Bill O'Brien. So I think at least hopefully the offense should be better. But you're right. As far as the draft goes, he wasn't really – he was kind of a loser from the draft based on what happened, what the Patriots did. All right, I like it. Moving on to the running back position. So I have two here again, and I'll run through them fairly quickly. But sticking with my theme from the Rams, Cam Akers is my under-the-radar winner. It kind of, you'll sense a theme here throughout why we're discussing these guys as winners or losers, but a lot of mock drafts had the Rams taking a running back in the third or fourth round, and they didn't. They didn't take Zach Evans until the sixth round. So not only is that not high draft capital in a running back, but it's also, as I mentioned earlier, Zach Evans is not a guy I really like. I think he's overvalued within the community personally, but so the fact that they didn't even draft him until the sixth round shows that even if Cam Akers himself is maybe not an inspiring option and the offense isn't going to be great, he should get the vast majority of the touches just like he did down the stretch last season. Now, Zach Evans is obviously added competition compared to what they had last year, but I still think he comes out of the draft as a winner. Now, my backup here is Alexander Mattison, and I think this one is actually pretty sneaky because the Vikings did not draft a running back until the seventh round. They took Dwayne McBride. Dwayne McBride in the seventh round, who again is another guy I'm not very high on. But the rumors are still swirling that the Vikings could let Dalvin Cook go. They could trade Dalvin Cook, which is still a possibility. So the fact that the Vikings did not invest heavily in another backup means that Alexander Mattison, to me, is a winner from the draft. At the worst, he's still the handcuff running back option to Dalvin Cook. And best case scenario, Dalvin Cook gets cut or he gets traded, and then all of a sudden Alexander Mattison is the starting running back for the Minnesota Vikings. So I think he's kind of a sneaky winner from the draft. I don't know. What do you think? Do you agree with that take, or you see Mattison differently?
I would agree. I think. I guess there's a lot of Madison truthers out there who say that he's going to be the starter, which I think is an extreme. But I guess they also didn't draft anybody else. So.
Right.
I don't think it's a bad take.
They could still sign one of those older vets in over the summer. Leonard Fournette, Zeke.
That's true.
Kareem Hunt, Melvin Gordon. They could still bring someone in, and I think if they let Dalvin Cook go, they would. Mm-hmm. But just given the situation right now and the events of the draft, I think Madison is a pretty big winner.
Yeah, I like it.
All right, how about you?
And then my winner for running backs is Najee Harris, because he's somebody who has been very inefficient as a running back, but he's gotten all the opportunities. He's basically got like a 70% workload plus. So he's basically someone who has succeeded from that fact that he's just gotten so many carries. So I thought they were going to draft somebody, but the Steelers did not draft a running back at all. I don't think, right? Yeah, they didn't even take a guy in like the 6th or 7th round. So I think Najee Harris is a winner for at least another year. He's going to get basically all the carries again.
Sure. And to add on to your point, probably another sneaky winner would be Jalen Warren as the backup behind him because they didn't draft anyone. So he kind of remains a high-level priority handcuff to them.
That's true.
Yeah. Okay, I like it. So my under-the-radar loser at the running back position is Aaron Jones. Now, in my opinion, it has been a bad offseason for Aaron Jones. He's obviously getting older. I mean, he's getting up there in age. We don't like to see that at the running back position, especially in Dynasty. He lost Aaron Rodgers from his offense. I think the offense is going to be less efficient and fewer scoring opportunities with Jordan Love at the helm. And plus, Gabe, I love to shit on the Packers because, Bears fan. But it is analysis, too. It's not just conjecture. So he lost Aaron Rodgers. I don't think the offense is going to be as good. He's still splitting opportunities with A.J. Dillon. And where Aaron Jones really makes his hay is in the receiving game. And what did the Packers do in this draft? They drafted a wide receiver and 2 tight ends with all pretty good draft capital. So I think that's going to take away receiving opportunities for Aaron Jones while still splitting a backfield with A.J. Dillon, while also probably being on a less efficient offense where he doesn't have Aaron Rodgers feeding him the ball through the air consistently. Now, obviously, we don't know what kind of rapport he has with Jordan Love. I'm sure he's still going to be used in the receiving game, but I just think it's going to be fewer opportunities, more competition, and a less efficient offense overall. So I know you hate to see that as a Packers fan, but that's where I'm at right now with Aaron Jones.
I understand. Yeah. I guess on the flip side, I guess maybe you could say A.J. Dillon is a winner slightly. I wouldn't say massively, but I think slightly because they only took Lou Nichols in the 7th round. So I guess that backfield is basically staying the same, like you said, with Aaron Jones getting older. I think he's going to slowly decline, where I think A.J. Dillon is still kind of in his prime. Maybe he could, because I know last year people thought A.J. Dillon would be a massive breakout for the 22 season, so maybe that'll happen this year.
I have a hard time seeing that. It could. It definitely could. Right. I just think the offense is not going to be good enough. But you're right. I think A.J. Dillon, on the other hand, is kind of a winner because he's more that, bruiser, the grinder, the first and second down guy. They didn't draft anyone really to take those touches away from him. So, I get what you're saying. Now, you're going to have to convince me on your running back loser because when I saw this in the doc, I was very surprised. I thought he was a winner. So, you're going to have to convince me on this one.
I thought this one was pretty spicy. Yeah. So, I guess my explanation behind it is that, well, I guess now there are talks that the Cowboys could sign Zeke. But I think Pollard. Tony Pollard was a massive sell for me after the 22 season. I sold him in a few leagues and got some pretty good value for him because I think Pollard's success comes from the fact that he's a great RB2. So I think the fact that Zeke could be on his way out, and then the big thing is they didn't draft basically a running back to replace Zeke. They drafted Deuce Vaughn, who I think is basically a Tony Pollard but smaller. So I think Pollard has his success from basically being the running back too, and not carrying that main workload. So I guess I have some questions of how that backfield is going to play out this year. But Pollard basically had tons of points basically from kind of like the second and third downs off the catching work. So I think with Zeke not there, and they didn't draft a running back to replace Zeke, his role could be slightly iffy, I think, this year.
Okay. All right. No offense, but I'm not convinced.
All right. Darn it.
I personally, no, it's okay. I'm hard to convince. I'm hard to persuade, but. Yeah, I won't get into this too long. I know we want to not go on too long here, but I don't know. I saw Pollard as a winner because I thought they were going to draft a running back much earlier, and the fact that they take Deuce Vaughn, who personally I'm not very high on. I think he's a very undersized back. Yeah, he is more of a receiving option, but just the fact that they took him so late, I feel like Tony Pollard is a big winner from the draft because you're right. He thrived off efficiency last year. But I think now, typically as you get more touches, the efficiency goes down. But I think now he'll be able to hopefully maintain that level of efficiency while getting more touches. And I don't know if anyone's worried about the injury, but I mean, from what
That's
I've
true
seen,
too.
stuff on Twitter, from that kind of stuff, like he should be fully healed and ready to go even before training camp starts. So I think we see that one differently. I definitely see
Hmm.
Pollard as a winner from the draft, but it's definitely interesting to hear your perspective on that too. So I guess with that being said, then do you feel like Deuce Vaughn is almost like a sleeper?
Mm. No, I don't think so. I guess I don't really like that landing spot because I feel like Pollard basically already has that role.
Okay, okay, fair enough. All right, well, moving on to the wide receivers then. My wide receiver under the radar winner is Treylon Burks. This one doesn't take too much explanation, but basically the Titans didn't draft any competition
Hmm.
for him. I mean, I'm looking through our doc here. I think they drafted a late round wide receiver. Yeah, they took Colton Dowell in the 7th round.
Who?
Um, yeah, right. And then they took a tight end. Okay, Josh Wiley in the 5th round, but
Mhm.
that is not high draft capital invested
No.
into either of those guys. And personally, I don't really like their profiles coming out of college anyway. So I think Treylon Burks is a big winner. He's the type of receiver that can be a target hog in the NFL, in my
Mhm.
opinion. And this offense is definitely going to give him the opportunity to do that based on the lack of options around him. Plus, I also kind of like the fact that they drafted Will Levis as opposed to a mobile quarterback.
Yeah.
Or not so much a mobile quarterback, but like for an example, if they had taken like an Anthony Richardson or a Hendon Hooker, those
Mhm.
guys have lower completion percentages from college compared to Will Levis. Now, Will Levis is probably a shakier prospect overall, but he had a higher completion percentage in college. So I think if he ever takes over the starting role, he's another guy similar to Tannehill that can feed the ball to Treylon Burks, as opposed to maybe someone like a Malik Willis who they have there who's going to take off and run more, and who the team, at least in terms of last year, didn't even trust to throw the ball at all. So overall, I think Treylon Burks is, in my opinion, one of the biggest winners at any position from the NFL
Mhm.
draft.
I dig it. Yeah. Yeah. I like the take. Then my wide receiver winner is Cooper Kupp. So basically, kind of touching on the Rams stuff that you did earlier for Akers and Stafford. So I guess the reason that the Rams didn't take basically any offensive weapons other than Zach Evans in the 6th round. So I think Cooper Kupp is basically just going to still be that ball hog this year and get basically 150 plus targets slash some of the runs in the backfield.
Sure. Yeah, I like it. All right, for me then now going on to my wide receiver loser from the draft, I'm going with Michael Pittman. Um, and it's, in some ways it's a little bit similar to what I was just saying about kind of the inverse of what happened with Treylon Burks. He got
Mm.
a mobile quarterback in Anthony Richardson. Probably means he's going to take off and run the ball more than throwing it, and he's also not an accurate passer. At least he wasn't for the most part in college. Um, so I think it's a downgrade for him. Now, granted, they didn't really add much competition in the wide receiver room, but I think just the quality of the targets is not going to be there. I guess to be fair, it's not like he really had high quality targets last year either with
Mhm.
Matt Ryan and Nick Foles and who's the other guy, Sam Ellinger.
Yeah.
But overall, I think Anthony Richardson, while he's great for fantasy, is not
Mhm.
going to be great for his receiving options, starting with Michael Pittman at the top.
I like it. Then mine is DeAndre Hopkins because most people thought he would probably be traded during the draft, and he was not. So he stays on the Cardinals. I guess he was rumored to go to the Patriots or the Ravens. I think were two of the big ones. I think the trade to the Patriots would have been very nice. So I guess one of those deals could still happen. Which I guess that would also help Mac Jones, who I had as a loser for the quarterbacks. So I think ultimately, because Kyler's going to be out, so there's some questions on the quarterback play on the Cardinals, basically for the entire 23 season. So I think he's kind of iffy as one of those aging vets.
Sure. Yeah. And he was actually my backup option to Michael Pittman if you didn't take him because yeah, I think he would have benefited greatly from a draft
Hmm.
night trade, which was
Yeah.
what a lot of people were expecting. So, okay, all right, and now finally moving on to the tight ends. My under the radar winner at the tight end position is Dalton Schultz. First of all, they have a new quarterback who I think is going to be an upgrade for the offense as a whole in C.J. Stroud compared to what they had last year in Davis Mills or what they were going to
Hmm.
have this year with Davis Mills or Case Keenum if they didn't take a quarterback. So I like that for him. They also, at the same time, didn't really bring in much competition for targets. I mean, okay, so they drafted Tank Dell in the 3rd round. He's despite the first name Tank, he's actually a very undersized wide receiver. So I don't think he's really going to be taking. He's not like some big-bodied wide receiver that's going to be taking like end zone targets away from Dalton Schultz or anything like that. As far as I'm projecting, and otherwise the wide receiver room is not very inspiring, and they don't really have much competition at the tight end position behind him either. So I think he gets a boost from not getting many receiving, not much competition for receptions or targets. While also hopefully having an improved offense now with C.J. Stroud.
All right, sweet. I like that one. And then my tight end winner is Gerald Everett on the Chargers, because I think most people thought that the Chargers would probably take some would take Mayer or Kincaid, and they did not. So I think his job security is better for this year. And the last year he saw quite a few targets, and he's obviously connected to Justin Herbert. So I think he'll probably have another pretty good year this year.
Sure, he's actually one of the ones I was considering too as my tight end winner, but because the Chargers were mocked so much to take a tight end, they didn't.
Exactly.
Now of course they took Quentin Johnston, that could affect it, but at least not more competition at the tight end position.
Yeah.
All right, and then finally, so I think we both saved some spice here for you at the end with our tight end losers of the draft.
Some big tight ends.
So I went with Kyle Pitts, which ironically I just traded for him in a league earlier today, but it was a good price that I got him for, so I can't complain there. But I think he's a loser from the draft just in general, primarily because of the Bijan pick. But when you look at this Falcons offense, they don't have a quarterback. I mean, okay, yes, they have Desmond Ridder, they have Taylor Heineke. Neither of those guys inspire confidence in me. There was a possibility that the Falcons were going to trade up to draft one of the quarterbacks, one of the big three, or even take Will Levis, too. I would have liked that better than what we have in Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke. But in addition to, so they didn't do that, but in addition to that, they're an offense that wants to run the ball. It was so frustrating, right? For anyone who had Kyle Pitts in fantasy last year, whether it's Dynasty or redraft, it was so frustrating because the Falcons just would refuse to throw the ball. They would try to establish the run, all four quarters basically. They could be down 20 points and they're still trying to establish the run. So unfortunately, I think that's going to continue with Arthur Smith still at the helm. And the fact that they drafted Bijan not only is going to take, short yardage receptions or targets away from Kyle Pitts, but it also, to me, signals an even heavier commitment to the run. So I think he's kind of a loser of this draft. I still think eventually one of these days he's going to break out for fantasy and hit the ceiling that we all want him to. But coming out of the draft, I think it's not a great position that he's in, and then we may still have to wait another year to see that breakout. But just with the added competition and the commitment to the run and the lack of an inspiring option at quarterback, he's a loser to me from the draft. I don't know. Do you agree with that, or do you see it differently?
I would agree. Yeah, I think because London had like a 30% target share last year. I guess I'm not sure exactly what Pitts was off the top of my head, but you're right. They just consistently did not throw the ball to him, and I think they ran the ball like top 3 last year. So I think that with the addition of Bijan, I think they're just going to keep running it even more now. So I like it.
Yeah, fair. All right, bring us home, my friend.
All right, so the last one is Mark Andrews, which I'm sure is kind of a shock as well. So basically we both picked 2 guys who are probably top 3 tight ends in Dynasty. So I guess I wouldn't say he's a massive loser, but I chose Mark Andrews because I thought it was a little bit of a spicier take. Because they drafted Zay Flowers in the first round, and then they obviously signed Lamar to an extension. I guess a counterpoint, to my take is that the Ravens are hopefully going to throw the ball more this year with the coaching staff change. But I think with the addition of Zay Flowers and OBJ as well, joining the Ravens, and then I forgot what else I was going to say there.
Well, the increased target competition obviously is a good thing.
Yeah, and then I thought there was another guy I was going to say though, because there's Zay Flowers and OBJ.
Antonio Brown.
Oh, I forgot about that signing as well. Yeah, Antonio Brown.
The Ravens are signing Antonio Brown apparently.
Yes, I feel like Bateman.
Oh,
that's what I was trying to think of. Exactly. So I feel like there's a lot of bodies back there in the backfield, and since the Ravens have run the ball so much in the past with Greg
Roman.
Yeah, so I just think after signing Lamar, they're obviously going to run the ball still quite a bit, and with Dobbins. So I just don't know exactly how many targets Mark Andrews is going to receive this year.
Sure. I agree with you on the increased target competition. I actually think because they've got the new OC now, Todd Monken, I think they're going to throw the ball more. But obviously, if there's more target competition, that might kind of cancel. They might kind of cancel each other out at that point.
That's true. Yeah.
All right, let me put your feet to the fire really quickly here. So, I know we're talking about Dynasty, but for this upcoming season, do you prefer Mark Andrews or T.J. Hockenson?
Oh. I think T.J. Hockenson probably I wouldn't say by much, but I think I would probably prefer T.J. Hockenson. I think since he's connected to Kirk Cousins, I think with the added addition to the Ravens with Antonio Brown and OBJ and Zay Flowers, I think Hockenson. I mean, because last year after the trade, he just commanded so many targets. He was getting about 10 targets a game. I guess he wasn't really getting a lot of yards after the catch, but I think just with the number of targets he received, I think he's probably a top 3 or 4 tight end.
Okay, so I assume you still have Andrews behind Pitts and Kelsey then for this upcoming season.
I would, yeah.
So you have Pitts ahead of him?
I guess that's tough. You had to say Pitts or Andrews. I think I'd probably take Andrews over Pitts in terms of this season.
Okay. What about Andrews or Goddard?
Ooh. I would say Andrews there.
Okay. All right, so it looks like you've slotted him in as your tight end 3 then for this year, behind Hockenson and Kelsey.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. Well, I think that just about does it. I know we've gone well over an hour now, but we just wanted to bring you guys a post NFL mock draft, kind of see how things are going, and bring you some winners and losers again from the veteran pool. So please let us know your thoughts in the comments. Feel free to like the video, subscribe if you like the content. I don't know if we're going to make this like a weekly thing, but we would like to make this a regular thing as the Dynasty offseason carries on here. Because, everything for the last few months has been building up to the draft.
Yeah.
And now we really have nothing until maybe training camp, I guess you could say, in a couple months. So it's gonna be kind of a down period, a low period for a while here. So hopefully we'll have some opportunities to bring you guys some more content, just talking through some ideas. Obviously these last 2 episodes we've done more based on mock drafts around the NFL draft, but we'd love to get more into like specific trade shows, strategy shows, like how to approach a startup, all those sorts of things. So if you like the content and you want more, give us a like and subscribe so you can get notified when we do release more content. But was there anything else you wanted to say, man?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
That was fun.
Well, this was a lot of
fun.
That was a blast,
watching
the draft was fun. I hope you all enjoyed watching the draft. If you did, and good luck with your rookie drafts. Again, if you want to use the comment section of this video to ask us questions specific to your rookie drafts or just in general, maybe questions about how our draft went here that we did, just let us know. We're happy to help. And this was a lot of fun, and hopefully we can, connect for a video again soon.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, thanks, guys.
Yep, thanks. See ya.